The rain hammered against the taxi window like accusations I couldn't answer. Each droplet traced a path down the glass, distorting the streetlights into bleeding stars, and I watched them blur through vision already clouded by exhaustion. My daughter's weight pressed against my chest. Her small body finally surrendered to sleep after hours of restless whimpering. Sophia, 3 months old, and already she'd seen more struggle than any child should know in a lifetime. The cab smelled of synthetic pine and someone else's cigarette smoke, a nauseating combination that made my empty stomach turn. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, a stale bagel I'd found in the break room at the diner where I worked the overnight shift. 23 years old, and this is what my life had become, counting coins for cab fare, rationing meals, wearing the same black dress for the 3rd day because I couldn't afford the laundromat. This the address? The driver's voice cut through my fog, gruff and impatient. I peered through the rain at the building looming before us, the Ashford estate. Even in the storm, it radiated wealth that made my throat tight. Manicured hedges lined a circular driveway, where a fountain, an actual fountain, stood silent in the downpour. Warm light spilled from tall windows, painting golden rectangles on the wet pavement. Yes, I whispered, though everything in me screamed to tell him to keep driving. But where would we go? Back to the studio apartment with the broken heater and the landlord who'd taped an eviction notice to my door this morning? To my mother's house, where she'd made it clear there was no room for a daughter who'd thrown her life away on a worthless man? The meter read $47.50. I had $53 to my name. That'll be $47.50, he said, as if I couldn't read. My hands shook as I counted out the bills, leaving me with $5 and some change, enough for maybe 2 days of formula if I stretched it. If Sophia didn't eat much, if I got lucky. The driver didn't offer to help with my bag. Why would he? I gathered Sophia carefully, protecting her face from the rain with the thin blanket my neighbor had given me. A goodbye gift, when she'd heard I was being evicted. The overnight bag I'd packed contained everything we owned now. 3 outfits for Sophia, 2 for me, diapers I'd stolen from the hospital, and a photograph of my father, dead 6 years now. Sometimes I was grateful he couldn't see what I'd become. The rain soaked through my coat within seconds. Not really a coat. More of a cardigan that had seen better years. Water dripped from my hair into my eyes as I ran toward the covered entrance, my worn sneakers splashing through puddles that reflected a version of myself I barely recognized. Thin, hollow-eyed, desperate. I'd called ahead. That was something at least. Marcus had answered on the 5th ring, his voice tight with annoyance when he realized who was calling. "What do you want, Arya?" As if he didn't know. As if he hadn't blocked my number 3 times already. "I need help," I'd said, hating how small my voice sounded. "Your daughter needs help. We have nowhere to go." The pause had stretched so long I'd thought he'd hung up. Then, "Come to my mother's house tomorrow, 6 o'clock. We'll figure something out. We'll figure something out." Not exactly a warm welcome, but I was in no position to demand warmth. Now, standing under the portico with water pooling around my feet, I shifted Sophia's weight and reached for the doorbell. The button glowed softly, elegant even in this small detail. Everything here was elegant. Everything here was the opposite of my life. The door opened before I could press it. A woman stood there, mid-50s, with the kind of beauty that money maintained. Her silver hair was swept into a flawless chignon. Diamonds caught the light at her ears and throat. She wore a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, and her expression, perfectly composed, radiated the kind of cold disapproval that needed no words. Marcus's mother, Victoria Ashford. "You're late," she said. Her voice was cultured, each syllable precisely articulated. "Marcus said 6 o'clock. It's 6:15. The bus was delayed, and then I couldn't find a cab in the rain. I stopped myself. Excuses sounded pathetic, and I was already pathetic enough standing here dripping on her pristine doorstep. Victoria's gaze traveled over me slowly, cataloging every failure, my soaked hair hanging in rat's tails, my cheap clothes, my desperation. When her eyes landed on Sophia, something flickered in her expression. Not warmth. Assessment. "Come in," she said, stepping back, but not far enough that I didn't have to squeeze past her. "You're dripping all over the marble." The foyer stole my breath, chandelier dripping with crystals, a staircase that curved upward like something from a movie, artwork on the walls that looked expensive enough to feed us for a year. The air smelled of lilies and furniture polish and old money, a scent I'd never be able to replicate no matter how much I scrubbed. "Take off your shoes," Victoria instructed, closing the door behind me. I looked down at my sneakers, at the puddle forming around them, and felt heat crawl up my neck. They were the only shoes I owned besides the heels I wore for work, and those had a broken strap I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Victoria called, ignoring my apology. "She's here." Footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, and then he appeared. Marcus. The man I'd loved with the kind of blind faith only the young and stupid possess. He'd been beautiful once in my eyes, all charm and promises and practiced smiles. Now I saw him clearly, weak chin, soft hands that had never done a day's real work, eyes that wouldn't quite meet mine. "Aria." He said my name like an inconvenience. He didn't look at Sophia, hadn't looked at her properly since the day she was born, when he'd signed the birth certificate because I'd begged and then disappeared for 3 weeks. "Thank you for letting us come," I said, hating the pleading note in my voice. "We need to talk," he said. "Mother's office." Victoria was already walking, her heels clicking against marble with military precision. Marcus gestured for me to follow, still not looking at his daughter. I adjusted Sophia in my arms, she was starting to stir, and trailed after them down a hallway lined with family portraits. Generations of Ashford staring down with the same cool disapproval I'd seen in Victoria's eyes. The office was all dark wood and leather, bookshelves filled with volumes that had probably never been read. Victoria settled behind the desk like a queen on a throne. Marcus stood beside her. Neither offered me a seat. I stood there dripping, holding our daughter, and waited for judgment. "Marcus has explained the situation," Victoria began, folding her hands on the desk. Heavy rings glinted, emerald, sapphire, diamonds. "You were evicted from your apartment. You have no family willing to take you in. You're working, what did you say? Overnight shifts at a diner." Each fact landed like a slap. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. "And you think the solution is to come here and ask for money?" "I'm asking for help with your granddaughter," I said, finding a spark of backbone somewhere beneath the humiliation. What Sophia needs," Victoria interrupted smoothly, "is stability, structure, proper care. Not a mother who can't even afford rent." The words punched the air from my lungs. "I'm doing my best." "Your best?" Victoria's laugh was sharp and cold. "Your best is raising a child in poverty. Dragging her through the rain to beg at our door?" "Mom," Marcus said quietly. But there was no conviction in it, a performance of objection. "We're prepared to help," Victoria continued, and for one foolish moment, hope fluttered in my chest. "We'll provide financial support, a proper home, education, everything a child deserves." "Thank you," I breathed. "Thank you so much. I'll pay you back, I swear." "You misunderstand." Victoria's smile was thin and sharp as a blade. "We'll provide these things for Sophia. Not for you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "What? The child stays with us. You sign over custody. We'll ensure she has the life she deserves. The Ashford name, the Ashford resources. You'll be free to get your life together. Find someone else. Start over." "You want me to give up my daughter?" My voice cracked on the last word. "We want what's best for the child," Victoria said calmly. "Surely even you can see that this—" She gestured at me, at my wet clothes and desperate eyes, "is no life for her." Sophia began to cry, as if she understood. I bounced her automatically, my mind reeling. "No," I said. "No, absolutely not. She's my daughter." "Marcus is her father," Victoria countered. "He has rights. We have lawyers. Marcus hasn't seen her in months. He wants nothing to do with—" "My mother doesn't want you here," Marcus said suddenly, and his voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Conviction borrowed from his mother's certainty. "She's right. You can't provide for Sophia. Sign the papers, Aria. It's better for everyone." "Better for—" I couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. The room was closing in, warm and suffocating despite the November chill outside. "You want to take my baby? We want to give her a future," Victoria said, "which is more than you can offer." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. Sophia's cries grew louder, feeding off my panic. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare, had to be. "I'll call the police," I said wildly. "You can't just take someone's child." "We're not taking anything," Victoria said smoothly. "We're offering a solution. But if you refuse, well," she tilted her head. "Unfit mothers lose custody all the time. No home, no income, a child living in poverty. The courts tend to favor stability." "Marcus, please." I turned to him, desperate. "Please, she's your daughter. Tell her." But Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. He'd never been strong enough to stand against his mother. I'd been a fool to think he'd start now. "You have 48 hours to decide," Victoria said, standing. "Sign the custody papers, or we'll pursue legal action. Either way, that child will be in Ashford." She pressed a button on her desk. "Jenkins will show you out." No, I'm not leaving." The door opened behind me. A man in a suit, Jenkins presumably, stood waiting. "I won't give her up," I said, my voice breaking. "I won't. She's all I have." "Then you'd better find a lawyer," Victoria said coldly, "though I can't imagine how you'll afford one. Jenkins, please escort Ms. Chen out." A hand touched my elbow, not rough, but firm, immovable. "Don't touch me!" I jerked away, backing toward the door. Sophia was screaming now, sensing my terror. "You can't do this! You can't—" But they could. I saw it in Victoria's satisfied smile. In Marcus's guilty avoidance of my eyes. They had money, power, lawyers. I had nothing. Nothing except Sophia. I turned and ran. Through the hallway with its judging portraits across the marble foyer. I didn't bother with my shoes, just grabbed my bag and fled into the rain. Jenkins called after me, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The rain was falling harder now, a deluge that soaked through to my skin within seconds. I held Sophia close, trying to shield her, but she was getting wet too, her cries joining the storm's fury. Where was I going? I had no plan, no destination, just away. Away from the Ashfords and their cold threats and the future they wanted to steal. My feet hit the driveway, splashing through puddles. The circular drive seemed endless, the fountain mocking with its display of excess. I was crying now too, hot tears mixing with cold rain, my chest heaving with sobs I couldn't contain. A car turned into the drive, not a car, a vehicle. Black, massive, windows tinted so dark they reflected nothing but rain. It moved with predatory grace, headlights cutting through the storm like eyes opening in the dark. I stumbled to the side, nearly falling. The car glided past me, then stopped. Completely silent despite its size. I could see my reflection in the passenger window. Drowned rat holding a screaming infant. The picture of everything gone wrong. The back door opened. A man stepped out, and the world seemed to still despite the chaos of the storm. He was tall. I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes even from several feet away. Young, maybe late 20s, but carrying himself with an authority that had nothing to do with age. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, the kind of expensive that didn't need to announce itself. Dark hair, slightly longer than conventional, was pushed back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. All sharp angles and full lips, and eyes so dark they looked black in the rain. But it wasn't his appearance that froze me in place. It was the way everything around him seemed to bend. The rain fell differently near him, as if even nature knew to keep its distance. Two men emerged from the front of the vehicle. Massive, suited, hands disappearing into jacket pockets in a way that suggested weapons. They didn't look at me. They scanned the surroundings with the mechanical precision of security details, of bodyguards, of men accustomed to violence. The man in black didn't seem to notice the rain. It darkened his hair, traced the line of his jaw, but he stood utterly still, utterly composed. When his eyes found mine, I felt the impact like a physical touch. Dark, assessing, absolutely unreadable. He looked at me, really looked, in a way that made me feel simultaneously visible and exposed. His gaze traveled over my soaked clothes, my desperate grip on Sophia, my bare feet on the wet pavement. Not judgment like Victoria's, something else. Something I couldn't name. Then his eyes shifted to the house behind me, to the warm lights and pristine facade, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Perhaps. But more than that. Calculation. He moved toward me with fluid grace, each step deliberate. One of his guards shifted position, hand definitely on a weapon now, watching me like I might be a threat. As if I could threaten anyone in this state. The man stopped 3 feet away. Up close, I could see details that made my breath catch despite everything. The scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the ring on his right hand that looked heavy and old, the faint scent of expensive cologne mixing with rain and something darker. Leather. Gunpowder. "You're bleeding," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe. Refined, but with rough edges underneath, like silk wrapped around steel. I looked down. My foot was cut. I must have stepped on something in my flight. Blood mixed with rainwater, trailing pink across the pavement. "I'm fine," I said automatically, because what else could I say? I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. His eyes dropped to Sophia, still crying in my arms, her blanket soaked through. "The child needs to be warm," he said. Not a question. An observation delivered with the weight of command. "I know that," I snapped, then immediately regretted it. This man radiated danger in a way that made Victoria's threats seem like child's play. "I'm sorry. I need to go." "Where?" The simple question shattered me. Where? I had nowhere. No home, no money, no options. Just a screaming baby and $5 to my name. I shook my head, unable to answer, and felt fresh tears spill over. The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A decision made. "Dante," he said quietly, not looking away from me. One of the guards stepped forward immediately. "Bring the car around. We're leaving." "I don't need—" I started, but he'd already turned toward the house. The front door had opened. Victoria stood there, Marcus behind her, both of them staring at the scene with expressions I couldn't read. The man walked toward them with that same deliberate grace, and I watched Victoria's face transform. The cold superiority drained away, replaced by something I'd never seen in her before. Fear. Pure, undiluted fear. "Mrs. Ashford," the man said, and his voice carried despite the rain. What an unexpected pleasure. Victoria's hand went to her throat, touching the diamonds there like a talisman. "Mr. Constantine, we didn't know you were coming. Marcus didn't mention—" "Marcus doesn't know everything," the man, Constantine, said softly. He glanced back at me, still standing in the rain with Sophia, then back to Victoria. "That woman, with the child, who is she?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I'd never seen her falter, never seen that perfect composure crack. But standing before this man, Constantine, she looked almost small. She's nobody," Victoria finally managed, her voice missing its usual authority. "A former associate of Marcus's. She was just leaving." "Nobody," Constantine repeated, tasting the word. He looked back at me again, and this time his gaze lingered on Sophia, on the way I held her against the storm, against everything. "She has your son's eyes." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. He'd looked at my daughter for mere seconds and seen what Marcus had denied for months. "Mr. Constantine, this is a family matter," Victoria tried, recovering some of her steel. "I assure you, we have everything under control." Control. The word fell from his lips like a stone into still water, sending ripples of tension through the air. Yes, I can see how controlled everything is. A woman bleeding in the rain, an infant screaming in the cold. Very controlled, Mrs. Ashford. Marcus had gone pale, practically hiding behind his mother. Whatever business brought this man to their door, Marcus wanted no part of confronting him. Constantine turned fully toward Victoria, and even from my distance, I felt the shift in atmosphere, danger condensing into something tangible. "I came here tonight to discuss your son's debt," he said quietly, too quietly, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. $50,000 borrowed from my organization 6 months ago, due last week, with interest. The amount is now $75,000. My breath caught. Marcus owed this man money, dangerous money from the look of things. "We're prepared to pay," Victoria said quickly. Marcus explained there was a misunderstanding about the timeline. There was no misunderstanding. Constantine's voice remained soft, controlled, but something lethal threaded through each word. "There was an agreement. Your son violated it. In my world, Mrs. Ashford, violations have consequences." He let that hang in the air, heavy with implication. "However," he continued, and his gaze slid back to me, "I find myself distracted by a different matter tonight." The way he said it made my skin prickle with awareness. Not sexual exactly, though there was something unsettling in how thoroughly he looked at me. More like I was a puzzle he'd decided to solve, a problem that had captured his interest. "The woman," he said. "Why is she running from your house in this condition?" "That's not your concern," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "I'm making it my concern." Constantine took a step toward her, and Victoria actually stepped back. Marcus had disappeared entirely into the house. "Answer the question." The rain continued to pour. Sophia's cries had weakened to exhausted whimpers. My arms ached from holding her, my foot throbbed, and I stood frozen in this surreal tableau, watching a stranger terrify the people who'd just threatened to take my daughter. "She came asking for money," Victoria said finally, "for the child. We offered to help, to take responsibility for the baby, but she refused. She's unstable, clearly unfit. You tried to take her child, not a question." Constantine stated it as fact, and something dark crossed his features. "You threatened her. We offered a solution. The girl has nothing. No home, no income. The child deserves better, and you." Constantine interrupted, his voice dropping to something that made my blood run cold. "Decided you had the right to determine that. To separate a mother from her infant. How very presumptuous of you, Mrs. Ashford." Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed to realize she'd made a terrible miscalculation. Constantine turned and walked back toward me. Each step was measured, predatory. When he reached me, he stopped close enough that I could feel heat radiating from him despite the cold rain. "What's your name?" he asked. "Arya," I whispered. My voice sounded broken even to my own ears. "Arya Chen. Arya Chen," he repeated as if memorizing it. "And the child?" "Sophia." His eyes dropped to my daughter again, and something flickered in them. Something I couldn't read but that made my heart stutter. "How old?" 3 months. And Marcus Ashford is her father." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "But he doesn't acknowledge her." Another nod. Constantine was silent for a long moment, studying us both. Rain dripped from his hair, traced the sharp line of his jaw. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like admiring a blade before it cut you. "You have nowhere to go," he said. Not a question. "No," I admitted, because what was the point of lying? He could see everything I was, everything I didn't have. No family, friends, no one who... I trailed off, shame burning hot despite the cold. No one. He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. Then he turned back to Victoria, who still stood in the doorway watching with barely concealed terror. "Mrs. Ashford," he called out, his voice carrying easily through the rain. "Your son's debt. I'm revising the terms." Victoria's hand clutched at the doorframe. "What do you mean?" "The $75,000 Marcus owes? Consider it paid in full." Hope flashed across Victoria's face, quickly followed by confusion. "I don't understand." "In exchange," Constantine continued smoothly, "you will sign a legal document relinquishing any and all claims to the child. No custody suits, no legal action, no contact. You will forget Sophia exists." The word slammed into me like a physical blow. What was he doing? Mr. Constantine, that's hardly equivalent. I disagree. Your son stole from me, Mrs. Ashford. He used my money for gambling debts, for his pathetic lifestyle. I could have him killed. He said it so casually, like discussing the weather. Instead, I'm offering you a way out. Take it. Victoria's face had gone white, and if we refuse, Constantine smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Beautiful and cold and promising violence. Then I collect the debt as originally planned. Your son has until midnight tomorrow. I believe you're familiar with how my organization handles defaulted loans. He paused, letting that sink in. Choose wisely, Mrs. Ashford. Your son's life, or a grandchild you've never wanted. He didn't wait for her response. Instead, he turned back to me, and his expression shifted, still unreadable but somehow less threatening, as if he'd put away the monster and was presenting something almost human. You're coming with me, he said. Not a question. A statement of fact. I can't, my mind reeled. I don't even know you. You know enough. His hand moved toward Sophia, and I instinctively pulled back. He noticed, and something like approval flickered in his eyes. Good, you should be afraid. But not of me. Not tonight. Why are you doing this? The question burst out before I could stop it. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something beneath the controlled exterior. Something raw and angry and grief-stricken. I know what it's like, he said quietly, to have everything taken from you by people who believe their money makes them gods. His gaze hardened. The Ashfords don't get to win this time. Before I could respond, he'd turned to his guard, Dante, he'd called him earlier. Take them to the car. Carefully. The child is cold. Dante moved forward, and I found myself being gently but firmly guided toward the massive black vehicle. The door was already open, warm air spilling out into the rain. I could see cream leather seats, dark wood paneling, luxury that made the Ashford house look modest. Wait, I tried to protest, but Dante was already helping me inside, his large hand surprisingly gentle as he supported my elbow. The interior was warm, blessedly warm. Sophia's cries quieted almost immediately as heat enveloped us. I sank into leather softer than anything I'd ever touched, and for a moment, I just breathed. Constantine slid in beside me, and suddenly the spacious interior felt intimate. He reached up and tapped the divider between us and the front seats. It slid up silently, closing us into our own private world. Your foot, he said, producing a first aid kit from somewhere. Let me see it. I can handle it. You're holding a child. You can't bandage yourself. Let me see it. His tone left no room for argument. Numbly, I shifted Sophia to one arm and extended my foot. Blood had pooled in the cut, mixing with rain and dirt. Constantine moved with surprising efficiency, producing antiseptic wipes and gauze. His hands were steady, careful, as he cleaned the wound. I hissed at the sting and he paused. I know, he said quietly. It will hurt. But infection would hurt more. He worked in silence, wrapping the cut with professional precision. I watched him, trying to understand what was happening. This man, this dangerous, terrifying man, was bandaging my foot in the back of his car while the rain drummed against the windows. Why? I whispered again. He finished securing the bandage before answering. When he looked up, his dark eyes held mine with uncomfortable intensity. Marcus Ashford came to me 6 months ago, he said, begging for money. Gambling debts, he said. His mother had cut him off. He was desperate. A pause. I gave him the loan because desperate men are useful. They make mistakes. What does that have to do with me? He told me about you, Constantine continued. Bragged, actually, about the young waitress he'd gotten pregnant. How he was going to handle it, make you disappear. His jaw tightened. I thought nothing of it at the time. Weak men abandon their responsibilities. It's common. Sophia shifted in my arms, settling into sleep now that she was warm. I held her close, feeling my heart pound against her small body. But tonight, Constantine said softly, I saw you running in the rain. Saw you protecting your daughter with nothing. No shoes, no coat, no money. Just your body between her and the storm." He leaned back, studying me. "That kind of love is rare, particularly among people who have nothing else to give. So you're... what? Saving us out of the goodness of your heart?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. His smile was sharp. "I have no heart, Arya Chen. Ask anyone who knows me. They'll tell you I'm a monster." He tilted his head. "But even monsters have codes. And the Ashfords violated mine." "What code?" "Family is sacred," he said simply. "You don't threaten a mother's child. You don't steal an infant from the woman who gave her life. The Ashfords tried to do both." His eyes hardened. They needed to be taught a lesson. The car was moving now, gliding through the rain-soaked streets. I had no idea where we were going, and the realization sent panic skittering up my spine. "Where are you taking us?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere warm and dry where Sophia can sleep without her mother wondering if they'll have a roof tomorrow." It sounded too good to be true. Nothing was free, especially not from men like this. "What do you want in return?" I asked bluntly. "Men like you don't help people without expecting something." Constantine's expression didn't change, but something glinted in his eyes. Respect, maybe. "Smart girl," he murmured. "You're right to be suspicious." He leaned forward slightly, close enough that I could smell his cologne again. "Expensive and dark. Here's what I want, Arya Chen. I want the Ashfords to suffer. I want Marcus to see his daughter living in luxury he could never provide while he rots in the knowledge that he abandoned her to poverty." "Revenge," I said. "You want revenge." "I want justice," he corrected. "For you, yes, but also for every woman they've used and discarded. Victoria Ashford has spent decades believing her money puts her above consequence. Tonight she learned otherwise." His hand moved, and I tensed. But he only reached past me to pull a blanket from the seat, soft cashmere that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He draped it over Sophia with surprising gentleness. "Sleep," he said, not quite a command, but close. "You're exhausted. We have a 30-minute drive, and you'll need your strength." "For what?" "For surviving," he said simply. "You've been doing it alone. That ends now." I didn't mean to fall asleep. Every instinct screamed that closing my eyes in the presence of this man was dangerous, possibly fatal. But exhaustion was a weight I couldn't fight. And the warmth of the car, the soft leather, the steady rhythm of rain against glass, it all conspired to drag me under. I woke to stillness. The car had stopped. Sophia was still asleep against my chest, her breathing deep and even. The blanket Constantine had draped over her had somehow expanded to cover me too, tucked around my shoulders with care I didn't remember. Constantine was watching me, not in a predatory way exactly, but with that same intense focus he'd turned on everything since stepping out of the car at the Ashford estate, like he was cataloging details, filing away information for later use. "We're here," he said quietly. I looked out the window and felt my breath catch. We were parked in front of a building that made the Ashford estate look quaint. All glass and steel and modern architecture, it rose into the night sky like a monument to wealth. A doorman in an actual uniform stood beneath a heated awning, waiting. "Where is here?" My voice came out rough from sleep. "My building, top floor." Constantine was already moving, opening the door. Cool air rushed in, but nothing like the freezing rain from before. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and glittering with reflected lights. Dante appeared, holding an umbrella even though the rain had stopped. Always prepared, these men. Always anticipating needs before they arose. "I can't afford," I started, but Constantine cut me off with a look. "You're not paying for anything. Come." He exited the car with fluid grace, then turned back, extending his hand. I stared at it. Tanned skin, long fingers, that heavy ring catching the light. A hand that had probably done terrible things. A hand offering help I desperately needed but didn't understand. I took it. His grip was warm, steady, and he helped me from the car with the kind of careful attention usually reserved for fragile things. I clutched Sophia close with my other arm, hyper-aware of how I must look. Soaked clothes, drying stiff, tangled hair, bare feet with one bandaged. The doorman's expression remained professionally neutral, but I felt the judgment anyway. "Mr. Constantine," the doorman said, opening the door. "Welcome back." "Thomas." Constantine's hand settled on the small of my back, guiding me forward. The touch was possessive in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. "No visitors tonight. No calls unless it's Dante or Mikhail." "Of course, sir." The lobby was all marble and gold accents, with a fountain, another fountain, trickling in the center. My wet footprints marked the pristine floor, like evidence of my unsuitability for this place. We bypassed the main elevators for a private one tucked in an alcove. Constantine pressed his palm to a scanner, and the doors slid open silently, revealing an interior lined with mirrors and dark wood. The elevator required no buttons. It simply began to rise the moment the doors closed, smooth and fast enough that my ears popped. I watched our reflection in the mirrors, him tall and composed in his expensive suit, me bedraggled and clutching my baby, the contrast almost comical. "You're wondering if you've made a mistake," Constantine said, not looking at me, "wondering if I'm more dangerous than the Ashfords. Are you?" "Yes." No hesitation. "But not to you. Not to Sophia." "How can I know that?" Now he looked at me. Really looked. And something in his expression made my chest tight. "You can't," he said simply. "You'll have to trust me or leave. But if you leave, you go back to nothing. The Ashfords will destroy you in court. You'll lose Sophia within a month." He paused. "With me, at least you have a chance." The elevator doors opened directly into an apartment that stole whatever words I might have found. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, a carpet of lights spreading in every direction. The space was massive, open concept, with furniture that looked like art pieces, a kitchen with appliances I couldn't name. Everything was dark colors and clean lines, masculine and expensive, and utterly devoid of anything personal. No photographs. No mementos. Just wealth arranged with perfect precision. "The master bedroom is through there," Constantine said, pointing to a hallway. "There's a guest room next to it. Take whichever you prefer." I stood frozen in the entryway, unable to process the surreal shift from homeless to this. "I don't understand what's happening," I whispered. Constantine shrugged off his jacket, revealing a shirt that probably cost more than my car had. Holster. He wore a shoulder holster with a gun nestled against his ribs like it was the most natural thing in the world. He saw me staring and didn't bother to hide it. "I'm not a good man, Arya," he said calmly, hanging the jacket on a hook. "I've killed people. I'll kill more. My business involves things you don't want to know about." He turned to face me fully. "But I protect what's mine, and for reasons I'm still examining, I've decided you and Sophia fall into that category now." "We're not yours," I said, finding my voice. "We're not anyone's." Something flickered in his eyes, approval again, that strange respect. "No," he agreed, "you're your own. But you're under my protection now, which amounts to the same thing in practical terms." He moved toward the kitchen. "Are you hungry?" The question was so mundane, so normal, that I almost laughed. Yes. I haven't eaten since yesterday." He nodded as if this confirmed something. "Sit. I'll make something." I couldn't hide my surprise. "I survive," he corrected, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator stocked with more food than I'd seen in months. Growing up, we learned to be self-sufficient. Can't always rely on others to feed you. I lowered myself onto a bar stool at the kitchen island, watching him move with the same controlled efficiency he'd shown bandaging my foot. Sophia stirred against me, making small sounds that would escalate to crying if I didn't feed her soon. "There's formula in the guest room," Constantine said without looking up from whatever he was preparing. "Bottles, diapers, everything you'll need." I stared at him. When did you?" "I made a call while you were sleeping. My people are efficient." He glanced at me. "Go. Feed her. I'll have food ready when you return." The guest room was down the hallway, and it was bigger than my entire apartment had been. A king bed dominated the space, covered in linens that looked impossibly soft. But what caught my attention was the corner that had been transformed into a nursery, a bassinet, A changing table stocked with diapers, wipes, creams, formula, the expensive kind I could never afford, bottles already sterilized and ready. Clothes in Sophia's size, soft and new and more than I'd been able to give her in 3 months. I sank onto the bed, shaking. This was insane. All of it. Hours ago, I'd been homeless, desperate, facing the loss of my daughter. Now I was in a penthouse with a man who radiated danger like heat, surrounded by luxury I couldn't comprehend, holding my baby while he cooked dinner in the next room. Sophia's fussing pulled me back to the present. I made a bottle with trembling hands, testing the temperature on my wrist like the nurses had taught me. She latched on immediately, drinking with the desperate hunger of a child who'd gone too long between feedings. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her, stroking her soft hair. "I'm so sorry for everything, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to keep you safe, I promise." Even if I had no idea how. When I returned to the kitchen, Constantine had plated pasta, simple but perfectly done, with garlic bread and a salad that had vegetables I actually recognized. He'd set out water and juice, painkillers next to my plate. "For your foot," he said, gesturing to the pills. "And the headache you probably have from stress." He wasn't wrong. I settled Sophia in my lap and reached for the fork with my free hand, suddenly ravenous. The first bite was heaven. Real food, hot and flavorful, and enough to make my eyes water. Constantine watched me eat with that same unnerving intensity. He'd poured himself whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light as he swirled it in the glass. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "Why?" I managed around a mouthful of pasta. "Because you're living in my home now. I should know who you are." "I'm nobody," I said, echoing Victoria's words. "Just a girl who made bad choices." "Marcus was a bad choice," Constantine agreed. "But Sophia isn't. She's perfect." The way he said it made me look up. He was staring at my daughter with an expression I couldn't read. Something between longing and pain. "Do you have children?" I asked before I could think better of it. His expression shuddered immediately. "No." "Want them?" "It doesn't matter what I want." He took a long drink of whiskey. "My life isn't suitable for children." "But you have all this." I gestured at the apartment. "Space, money, stability." "I have wealth," he corrected. "Not stability. I have enemies who would use a child as leverage. I have a business that requires violence and moral flexibility." His eyes met mine. "I have everything except the ability to be a father." There was something in his voice, regret, maybe, or resignation. I wanted to ask more, to understand this complicated man who'd swept into my life like a storm, but Sophia had fallen asleep again, milk-drunk and heavy in my arms. "You should rest," Constantine said, noticing. "Tomorrow will be complicated." "Why?" "What happens tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, Victoria Ashford's lawyers will deliver the custody documents. You'll sign them. Then we'll make your arrangement here official." "What arrangement?" He stood, moving around the island until he was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "You live here," he said quietly. "You and Sophia. I provide everything you need: housing, food, money, protection. In exchange, you let me ensure the Ashfords suffer for what they tried to do." "That's it? You just want revenge?" "I want justice," he corrected again. "But yes, that's it. And if I say no?" His expression didn't change. "Then I'll help you leave the city, give you enough money to start over somewhere the Ashfords can't find you. But you'll be running, Arya. Always running. Always afraid." He leaned closer, and I could smell whiskey on his breath. "Or you can stay. Let me handle them. Let me give Sophia the life she deserves." "Why do you care so much?" I whispered. "You don't know us." For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, because someone should have cared about my mother. About me, when we had nothing and the powerful crushed us beneath their heels. His jaw tightened. No one did. So we suffered. We died, some of us, because no one thought we mattered enough to save. The raw pain in his voice made my chest ache. "I'm not saving you," he continued, straightening. "I'm settling a debt the universe owes. Consider yourself lucky you're the beneficiary." He walked away before I could respond, disappearing down another hallway. I heard a door close, leaving me alone in the vast kitchen with my sleeping daughter and half-eaten pasta. I should leave. Every survival instinct I had screamed that staying here was dangerous, that men like Constantine didn't help without expecting something in return, that this was all too good to be true. But where would I go? I looked down at Sophia, peaceful in sleep, warm and fed and safe for the first time in her short life. Could I really take her back out into the cold? Back to uncertainty and poverty, and the constant terror of losing her? I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the disorienting realization that I had no idea where I was. Then it came rushing back. The rain, the Ashfords, Constantine, the penthouse that felt more like a museum than a home. I sat up too quickly, panic clawing at my chest until I saw Sophia sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside the bed. Someone had moved her while I slept. The thought of Constantine entering the room, lifting my daughter with those dangerous hands, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something uncomfortably close to gratitude. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. I'd slept for nearly 12 hours. My bag sat on a chair in the corner, and next to it were clothes I definitely hadn't packed. Designer labels, soft fabrics, everything in my size. A note rested on top in sharp, masculine handwriting. Wear these. Your clothes are being cleaned, K. I should have been insulted by the presumption. Instead, I found myself running my fingers over a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than a month's rent at my old apartment. The jeans were premium denim, butter soft. Even the undergarments were expensive, perfectly sized and utterly mortifying in their implication that Constantine had somehow known my measurements. Sophia stirred, making the small mewling sounds that preceded full-scale crying. I changed her quickly, using the supplies that had materialized overnight, then dressed in the clothes Constantine had provided. They fit perfectly, of course. Everything in this man's world seemed to fit perfectly, arranged with precision that bordered on obsessive. I found him in the kitchen, seated at the island with a laptop, coffee, and what looked like financial reports spread across the marble counter. He'd changed too. Dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he hadn't shaved. Stubble shadowing his jaw in a way that made him look slightly less polished, and somehow more dangerous. He glanced up when I entered, his dark eyes taking in the clothes with satisfaction. They fit, he observed. How did you know my size? I'm observant. He closed the laptop, giving me his full attention. There's breakfast in the warmer. Coffee is fresh. Help yourself. I should have questioned the domesticity of the scene. A mafia boss offering breakfast like we were playing house. But Sophia needed to eat, and so did I. So I made a bottle for her and filled a plate with eggs, toast, and fruit that looked like it had been delivered from a 5-star hotel. The Ashford's lawyer called an hour ago, Constantine said as I settled onto a stool. The documents are being prepared. They'll be delivered this afternoon. That fast? Victoria is motivated. I made it clear the alternative would be unpleasant for Marcus. He sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim. You'll sign them in front of a notary, everything legal and binding. They'll have no claim to Sophia ever again. The relief was so intense it made me dizzy. And then what? Then we establish your life here. We'll need to make this arrangement appear legitimate to anyone who might question it. He set down his coffee with deliberate care. The story is simple. You're my ward. I'm providing financial support in exchange for household management. Household management, I repeated slowly. Like a housekeeper? Like someone who lives here and helps maintain the space. It gives you legal protection, explains your presence, and provides cover for the money I'll be giving you. How much money? He named a monthly amount that made me choke on my eggs. It was more than I'd made in 6 months at the diner. That's insane. I can't accept that much. You can, and you will. You'll need it for Sophia. Clothes, supplies, activities as she grows, medical care, education. His expression was implacable. This isn't charity, Arya. It's an investment in ensuring the Ashfords see their grandchild thriving while they've been cut off entirely. Revenge, I said again. Justice, he corrected, as always. Sophia had finished her bottle and was staring up at Constantine with wide, curious eyes. He stared back, and something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "May I?" he asked, holding out his hands. Every protective instinct screamed no. But he'd been gentle last night, careful with the blanket, efficient with the supplies, and something in his eyes when he looked at Sophia, that longing I'd glimpsed, made me nod. He lifted her with surprising competence, supporting her head properly, settling her against his chest like he'd done it 1,000 times. Sophia studied his face seriously, one small hand reaching up to grab at his shirt. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. "She has your eyes, your chin." A pause. Nothing of Marcus, thankfully. "She has his nose," I admitted. "I try not to see it, but it's there. Noses can be changed." He said it so seriously that I laughed, startling both of us. "You're not giving my daughter plastic surgery." "Not until she's 18, he agreed, and I couldn't tell if he was joking. We sat in strange silence, him holding my daughter, me eating breakfast in borrowed clothes, sunlight painting everything gold. It felt surreal, domestic, dangerous in its normalcy. "Why are you really doing this?" I asked again, because I still didn't understand. "Men like you don't just help people. There has to be more to it." Constantine was quiet for a long moment, gently bouncing Sophia in a rhythm that seemed instinctive. "My mother was 17 when she had me," he said finally. "Unmarried, disowned by her family. My father was a powerful man who wanted nothing to do with us." His jaw tightened. "She did everything to survive, everything. Worked 3 jobs, lived in places that should have been condemned, went hungry so I could eat. I set down my fork, listening. When I was 8, she got sick. Something simple, an infection that antibiotics would have cured in days. But we had no money for doctors, no insurance, no one to help." His voice remained steady, but I saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. "She died in a charity hospital while I sat outside because children weren't allowed in the ward, died alone because she'd been abandoned by everyone who should have protected her." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I survived. Got taken in by an organization that saw potential in an angry child with nothing to lose. They trained me, used me, turned me into what I am now." He looked at me, and his eyes were hollow. "I can't bring her back, can't save her. But when I saw you in that rain, bleeding and desperate and fighting to protect your child," he stopped, composure cracking just slightly. "I saw her. I saw what might have been different if someone had cared enough to intervene." Understanding crashed over me. This wasn't about revenge on the Ashfords. Not really. It was about a little boy who'd watched his mother die, who'd grown into a dangerous man carrying that wound like a scar that never healed. "So I'm your second chance," I said. "Your way of rewriting history, perhaps." He looked down at Sophia, who'd fallen asleep against him. "Or perhaps I simply refuse to let history repeat itself when I have the power to stop it." The intercom buzzed, and Constantine's expression shifted back to cool control. He stood, carrying Sophia with him as he pressed the button. "Yes?" "Mr. Constantine," Dante's voice came through. "The lawyer is here, early." Constantine's eyes narrowed. "Send him up." He handed Sophia back to me carefully, then rolled down his sleeves and buttoned them, transforming from almost human to utterly controlled in seconds. When the elevator doors opened, he was already there, positioned between us and whoever was arriving. The man who stepped out was expensive. Tailored suit, leather briefcase, the kind of polished appearance that screamed high-priced attorney. But his confidence faltered when he saw Constantine. "Mr. Constantine, I'm James Rothschild, representing the Ashford family." "You're early," Constantine observed coldly. I said afternoon. Mrs. Ashford was anxious to resolve this matter quickly. Rothschild glanced at me, at Sophia, with barely concealed disdain. "I have the documents. Let me see them." Constantine took the papers, reading with the kind of focus that suggested he'd reviewed thousands of contracts. I watched him scan each page, his expression growing progressively darker. "This is unacceptable," he said finally. "I assure you, everything is standard. This clause." Constantine pointed to something I couldn't see. "It allows the Ashfords contact if they deem it in the child's best interest. That wasn't our agreement." Rothschild shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Ashford felt some provision for future contact was reasonable. Mrs. Ashford, Constantine interrupted, his voice dropping to something lethal, doesn't dictate terms to me. Go back, remove that clause and every other loophole you've buried in here. I want complete, irrevocable termination of all parental rights and claims. No contact. No visitation. No future provisions. Clean separation. That's highly unusual in these cases. Constantine stepped closer to the lawyer, and I watched the man actually take a step back. Do I need to remind you what happens if Mrs. Ashford attempts to renegotiate our arrangement? Each word was soft, precise, terrifying. Marcus owes me $75,000. That debt doesn't disappear just because Mommy is uncomfortable with the terms. Either she signs what I demand or I collect. With interest. Do you understand? Rothschild had gone pale. I'll speak with Mrs. Ashford. You do that. And tell her she has until 6 o'clock tonight. After that, the offer expires, and Marcus deals with the consequences of his theft. Constantine opened the elevator doors. Get out. The lawyer fled, nearly tripping in his haste. The doors closed, and Constantine stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, deliberately, like he was controlling something violent. She's trying to maintain control, I said quietly. Even now. Yes. He turned back to me and his expression was savage. But she'll learn. I don't negotiate. I don't compromise. When I make a deal, the terms are absolute. He walked back to the kitchen, pouring more coffee with hands that were perfectly steady, despite the rage I'd just witnessed. They'll deliver revised documents by tonight. You'll sign them. And the Ashfords will be erased from Sophia's life permanently. I should have been frightened by the display of controlled violence, by the casual way he threatened a man's life. But all I felt was a fierce, burning relief. Thank you, I said. He looked at me, surprised. For what? For fighting for us. I struggled to find words. For caring. Even if it's for complicated reasons. Something flickered in his eyes, that crack in the armor again. Brief, but genuine. I told you I'm not a good man, Arya. Maybe not. But you're a better man than Marcus ever was. The afternoon passed in strange domesticity. Constantine worked on his laptop, taking calls in Russian and languages I didn't recognize, his voice alternating between smooth negotiation and cold command. I explored the penthouse with Sophia, discovering rooms I hadn't seen. A library, a gym that looked like something from a magazine. A second bedroom that Constantine mentioned was for guests who need protection. At 5:30, the intercom buzzed again. The documents, Dante announced. Clean this time. Constantine reviewed them with the same meticulous attention, then nodded. Bring up the notary. The signing took 15 minutes. I read every word, understanding that I was severing Sophia's legal connection to the Ashford family forever. No inheritance, no rights, no claims. In exchange, they forgave Marcus's debt and relinquished all custody demands. My hand shook as I signed my name, making it official. When the notary and lawyer left, Constantine poured 2 glasses of wine. Expensive, probably, like everything else in his life. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. To survival, I countered. We drank, and for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. 3 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and strange new routines. I learned that Constantine was an early riser, always awake before dawn, moving through the penthouse with silent precision while I fed Sophia in the pre-dawn darkness. I learned that he took his coffee black, read 3 newspapers every morning, and conducted business in at least 5 languages. I learned that despite his controlled exterior, he had tells, the way his jaw tightened when someone disappointed him, the slight narrowing of his eyes before he made a decision that would change someone's life. I learned that he was obsessed with Sophia's safety. Bulletproof glass had been installed on all the windows. Security cameras monitored every entrance. Dante or one of the other guards was always present in the building, invisible but constant. When I mentioned taking Sophia for a walk in the park, Constantine had looked at me like I'd suggested skydiving without a parachute. Not without security, he'd said firmly. and not until I've had the route surveilled. She's a baby, not the president. She's under my protection. That makes her a target. He'd said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious. Anyone who wants to hurt me would see her as leverage. It should have terrified me. Instead, I found it oddly comforting. This fierce, possessive protection extending over my daughter like a shield. The money appeared in my account exactly as promised. More than I'd ever had. More than I knew what to do with. I bought clothes that fit, food that wasn't about to expire, diapers in bulk. I paid off the medical bills from Sophia's birth that had been crushing me. I sent money to my former landlord to cover the damage from the eviction. And slowly, carefully, I started to breathe again. But the domesticity had an edge. Constantine was never inappropriate, never crossed boundaries, but I felt his presence constantly. The way his eyes followed me when I moved through the apartment, the way he appeared whenever Sophia cried, as if he'd been listening for her, the way he'd started working from home more often. His laptop set up at the kitchen island where he could see us, possessive, protective. Intense in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. Tonight, I'd put Sophia down early, exhausted from a day of tummy time and attempts at rolling over. I'd showered, changed into pajamas, silk ones that had appeared in my closet along with everything else, and found Constantine on the balcony, despite the November chill. He stood at the railing, smoke curling from a cigarette, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and his jacket discarded. The city sprawled below us, lights stretching to the horizon, and he looked at it all like a king surveying his kingdom. I slid open the glass door, and he turned, stubbing out the cigarette immediately. "I didn't know you smoked," I said. "I don't. Usually." He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there this morning, bad habit from a previous life. "Rough day? Complicated." He turned back to the view. One of my warehouses was hit, shipment stolen. Someone is testing boundaries. I should have left it alone, gone back inside to safety and ignorance. But 3 weeks of living in his space, eating his food, accepting his protection, it had created a strange intimacy between us. "Is it dangerous?" I asked quietly. "Everything I do is dangerous, Arya. You know this. I mean for you. For us." He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. "You're safe here. I've made sure of it. Whatever happens in my world, it won't touch you or Sophia." He paused. "You have my word." "The word of a monster?" I said, echoing what he'd called himself that first night. His smile was sharp and sad. "Even monsters can keep promises. Sometimes we're better at it than good men." I moved to stand beside him at the railing, looking out at the city we both inhabited but experienced so differently. From up here, everything looked clean, orderly, beautiful. None of the grime or desperation or struggle visible from street level. "I got a message today," I said. "From Marcus." Constantine went very still beside me. "What did it say?" "He wants to meet. Says he made a mistake, that his mother pressured him, that he wants to be part of Sophia's life after all." I pulled out my phone, showing him the text. "He says he's changed." Constantine took the phone, reading with that same meticulous focus he applied to everything. Then deliberately, he deleted the message. "No," he said simply. "You can't just—" "I can. And I am." Marcus Ashford had his chance. Multiple chances. He chose to abandon you, to let his mother try to steal your child, to take money from dangerous people and lie about what he'd use it for. His voice was hard, absolute. "He doesn't get to come back now that you're safe and provided for. What if he's serious? What if he really has changed?" Constantine's laugh was bitter. "Men like Marcus don't change, Arya. They adapt. They see you here, living well, and they want a piece of it. He probably thinks he can use Sophia to get money from me, or from you now that you have resources. You don't know that. I know exactly that. I've seen 1,000 Marcus Ashfords in my life. Weak men who take and call it love." He turned to me, and his eyes were fierce. "You're not going back to him. You're not exposing Sophia to his instability. I won't allow it." "You won't allow it?" Heat flashed through me, the first real anger I'd felt toward him. You don't own me, Constantine. You don't get to make decisions about my life. I do when those decisions affect Sophia's safety. She's my daughter, and she's under my protection. His voice rose for the first time since I'd met him, raw and fierce. Do you think I've invested all this? The apartment, the money, the security, the constant vigilance, just to watch you walk back into the same trap? To let Marcus worm his way back in and destroy everything we've built? We haven't built anything, I shot back. This is your kingdom, your rules, your world. I'm just living in it. You think that's all this is? He stepped closer, and I could smell smoke and cologne and something darker. You think I do this for everyone? Obsess over their safety, rearrange my entire life to accommodate them, lie awake at night listening to make sure they're breathing. The admission hung between us, raw and unexpected. What are you saying? I whispered. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. I'm saying this stopped being about revenge on the Ashfords weeks ago. I'm saying I care about what happens to you. To Sophia. His jaw tightened. I'm saying I've become dangerously attached to this arrangement, and the thought of you leaving, of Marcus taking you back into his toxic world, makes me want to do violence. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Constantine, I know it's not fair. I know I have no right to feel possessive of you. You're not mine. You've made that clear. His eyes were dark, intense, burning with something that made my breath catch. But I can't help it. When I see you with Sophia, when I hear you laugh, when you fall asleep on the couch and I carry you to bed. He stopped himself. I'm in too deep, Arya, and I don't know how to step back. The confession shattered something between us. All the careful distance we'd maintained, the boundaries we'd drawn, it crumbled under the weight of his honesty. You carry me to bed? I asked stupidly, focusing on the smallest detail because the rest was too overwhelming. 3 times in the last 2 weeks. You work yourself to exhaustion taking care of Sophia, and you fall asleep wherever you land. His voice softened slightly. I can't leave you on the couch. Your neck would hurt in the morning. Something warm unfurled in my chest, dangerous and terrifying. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered. I want you to stay. I want Sophia to grow up safe. I want to keep protecting you both, even though I know it's selfish. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. I want things I have no right to want from you. Like what? His hand came up slowly, giving me time to move away, and cupped my face with surprising gentleness. His palm was warm against my cheek, calloused but careful. Like this, he murmured. Like touching you without pretending it's accidental. Like kissing you the way I've wanted to since the first night, when you stood in the rain and refused to give up your daughter despite having nothing. Constantine, tell me to stop, he said quietly. Tell me this is wrong, that I'm your benefactor and nothing more. And I'll step back. I'll maintain proper distance. I'll be what you need me to be. I should have told him to stop, should have maintained the boundaries, kept this arrangement professional and safe. But his thumb was stroking my cheek, and his eyes held something I'd never seen directed at me before. Real want, edged with vulnerability. I can't offer you normal, he continued when I didn't speak. I can't offer you safety outside these walls, or a life free from danger. My world is violent and complicated, and being with me would paint a target on your back even larger than the one that's already there. Then why? Because despite all of that, despite knowing it's selfish and possibly dangerous, I want you anyway. His other hand came up, cradling my face between his palms. I want to be the one who protects you, who provides for you, who makes you smile the way you do when Sophia does something new. I want to be more than your benefactor, Arya. If you'll let me. My hands had come up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Rapid, betraying the same nervousness I felt. This is insane, I whispered. 3 weeks ago I didn't know you existed. I know. You're a criminal. You've killed people. I know. I have a baby, baggage, an ex who might still cause problems. Marcus won't be a problem. I'll make sure of it. His voice held dark promise. As for Sophia, she's not baggage. She's perfect. I'd protect her with my life regardless of what happens between us. Why? I asked again, needing to understand. Why us? Why this? His forehead dropped to rest against mine, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because when I saw you in that rain, fighting for your daughter with nothing but your body as a shield, I saw what love looks like. Real love. The kind my mother had for me, the kind I thought didn't exist anymore in this ugly world. His hands tightened slightly on my face. And I wanted it. Wanted to be part of it. Wanted to protect it and nurture it. And maybe, selfishly, be loved like that someday too. Tears were streaming down my face now. And I didn't know when I'd started crying. I'm terrified, I admitted. Good, you should be. I'm terrifying. But there was warmth in his voice now, almost teasing. But I'm also yours, if you want me. Completely. Obsessively. Possessively. All the things I shouldn't be but can't help being where you're concerned. I thought about the last 3 weeks. About waking up to coffee already made and Sophia's bottles prepared. About the way Constantine watched us with that fierce protectiveness, like we were precious treasures he'd been entrusted to guard. About how safe I'd felt for the first time in months, not just physically, but emotionally. Like I could finally breathe without fear crushing my chest. If I say yes to this, I said slowly, to you, it changes everything. Everything is already changed. This just makes it honest. His thumb caught a tear on my cheek. But if you need time, if you need space to think, I'll give you that. No pressure, no expectations. You and Sophia will always have a home here, regardless of... I kissed him, cut off his careful words with my lips on his, clumsy and unpracticed, but real. He froze for a heartbeat, then made a sound low in his throat and kissed me back with the kind of restrained passion that suggested he'd been holding back for weeks. His arms came around me, pulling me close, and I melted into him, into his warmth, his strength, his fierce protection. The kiss deepened, and I tasted smoke and wine and something indefinably him. His hands were in my hair, cradling my head like I was fragile, even as his mouth claimed mine with increasing hunger. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. Is that a yes? He murmured. It's a terrified, probably stupid, definitely crazy yes, I managed. But yes. His smile was brilliant, transforming his face from dangerously beautiful to something almost boyish. I'll take it. He kissed me again, softer this time. I'll take you however you'll have me, Arya Chen. And I'll spend every day proving I'm worth the risk. We stood there on the balcony as the city glittered below, wrapped in each other, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly. There would be challenges ahead, dangers I couldn't fully comprehend, complications from his world bleeding into mine. But something like hope, something like home. Sophia's cry echoed from inside, and we both turned instinctively. I'll get her, Constantine said, already moving. I watched him go, this dangerous man who'd swept into my life like a storm, and felt my heart do something terrifying and wonderful. Maybe this was insane, maybe I'd regret it, but for the first time since Marcus had walked away, since I'd found myself alone and pregnant and terrified, I felt like I had a partner, someone who chose us not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. Constantine returned with Sophia, already soothing her with practiced ease, and settled beside me on the balcony bench. He positioned her so she could see the city lights, and his free arm came around my shoulders, pulling me against his side. Look at all those lights, little one, he murmured to Sophia. Someday you'll understand what a gift it is to be safe, to be loved, to have a mother who fought the world to keep you. He glanced at me. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, to have someone who chose to love you, not because they had to, but because you were worth loving. Sophia grabbed at his finger, and he let her, his expression soft in a way I'd never seen. We're going to be okay, I said quietly, believing it for the first time. Better than okay. Constantine pressed a kiss to my temple. I'm going to make sure you have everything. Safety, stability, happiness, whatever it takes. What about love? I asked, half teasing. His eyes met mine, serious and intense. That too. Especially that. He kissed me again, gentle and sure. I'm already halfway there, Arya. It's only a matter of time before I fall completely. The city stretched before us, full of possibility and danger and hope. Behind us, the penthouse waited, warm and safe, and suddenly feeling like home. And between us, Sophia made happy sounds, oblivious to the complicated adults holding her, just content to be loved. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined as a girl. It was darker, more complicated, built on foundations of violence and revenge and broken people trying to heal, but it was real. It was ours. And as Constantine pulled us both closer, protecting us from the cold November wind, I let myself believe in new beginnings, in second chances, in love that grew from ashes and rain, and the fierce determination to survive. 3 months ago, I'd had nothing. Now I had everything that mattered. My daughter, safety, and a dangerous man who'd chosen to be gentle with us, who'd seen me at my lowest and decided I was worth saving. Thank you, I whispered against his shoulder. For what? For stepping in that night, for fighting for us, for being brave enough to care. His arms tightened around us both. Thank you, he murmured into my hair, for letting me, for taking the risk, for giving me a chance to be something more than the monster I thought I'd become. We sat there as night deepened, 3 broken pieces that had somehow formed something whole, and I finally understood what home really meant. Not a place, not safety or money or comfort. But this, being chosen, being protected, being loved fiercely by someone who'd walked through darkness and decided you were worth stepping into the light for. And somewhere in the city below, the Ashfords lived with their choice, their loss, their mistake. But I couldn't find it in myself to care anymore. I had everything I needed right here.